Welcome to HFY Fiction Journey. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more epic and hilarious sci-fi adventures. Today, we've got a bunch of aliens who thought invading Earth was going to be a walk in the park, until they met their greatest enemy, gravity. Yep, you heard that right. Turns out our planet has some serious pull, and these invaders are having a harder time standing up than a toddler on ice skates. So, buckle up and get ready for some intergalactic clumsiness, as these aliens learn that Earth isn't so easy to conquer after all. You call that a landing? My grandmother could do better, and she's just a pile of rocks. Sergeant Gail barked through the comms, staring at the giant crater that now scarred the once green field. The alien craft lay at the bottom, a massive, saucer-shaped vessel twisted and dented from what had to be the worst landing in history. For weeks, the military had been on high alert after spotting unidentified objects orbiting Earth. Theories range from rogue asteroids to secret government projects or even satellites gone astray. But the truth was much stranger and funnier. Far above, invaders from a distant star system had cooked up what they thought was the perfect plan. Earth, they believed, was rich in resources and poorly defended. Its gravity was a mild 1G. Nothing they couldn't handle, or so they thought. The ship had plummeted through the atmosphere like a rock. Despite the crew's efforts, the shield shattered the moment they hit the thermosphere, leading to a desperate attempt to slow their crash. As the dust settled, Gail shook his head. Looks like gravity had other plans for them. He muttered to the soldiers around him. All right, let's see what kind of squishy invaders came to visit. Cautiously, weapons ready, they approached the wreck. Despite the situation, it felt like a joke, and they were about to be the punchline. The craft's hull was scarred from the brutal crash. With a loud groan, a section of the ship split open, forming a jagged ramp that slammed into the ground. From the darkness, shadowy figures emerged. Sergeant Gail blinked, then snorted. They're wearing stilts. The aliens, tall and gangly, stumbled awkwardly on long mechanical exo-suits, designed to increase their height and help them cope with Earth's gravity. The suits creaked under the strain, clearly showing how badly they had underestimated the planet's gravity. "Welcome to Earth," Gail shouted, waving mockingly. "Enjoy the fall?" The lead alien, teetering on its metal legs, turned its bulbous head toward him. A buzzing voice came from a device strapped to its neck. "We demand your immediate surrender," it stammered, struggling to stay upright. "Right," Gail replied dryly. "Let's see how that goes for you." Private Harris, standing nearby, couldn't hold back a laugh. "Sir, they're barely standing. I think gravity's kicking their butts. That's what happens when you skip leg day." Another soldier joked, sending ripples of laughter through the ranks. The aliens, however, were serious. One of them raised what looked like a weapon, a sleek metallic rod that began to glow at its tip. It would have been intimidating if it weren't wobbling in the alien's grip. The creature struggled to hold both its arm and the weapon steady. "Take cover," Gail ordered, though his tone was more amused than concerned. He watched as the alien finally lost its fight with gravity. Its knees buckled, and with a heavy thud, it face-planted into the dirt. The rod rolled harmlessly away. The scene quickly fell into chaos, not the kind the aliens had expected. As they tried to move forward, their legs wobbled and buckled under Earth's gravity. One by one, they toppled to the ground with heavy thuds. "Looks like we've got ourselves an invasion of toddlers learning to walk," Harris chuckled. The lead alien, still face down in the dirt, groaned before lifting its head. "You humans cheat," it croaked. "Your planet is cursed." "Not cursed," Gail replied, suppressing a laugh. "Just a bit more intense than you expected." He tapped the alien's suit with his rifle. "You should have done your homework before crashing the party." "You will not prevail," the alien hissed, propping itself up on its elbows. "We will adjust." "Adjust, huh?" Gail stood up. "Well, while you're busy adjusting, we'll be here." Not breaking a sweat, the soldiers moved in to round up the aliens who, despite their best efforts, couldn't find their balance. The sight was almost pitiful supposed conquerors, unable to stand on their own 2 feet. Some of the aliens tried to activate their weapons, but their hands shook too much and the devices slipped from their grip. "Think they've got reinforcements coming?" Harris asked as they herded the aliens into a makeshift holding area. Gail scratched his chin. "If they do, they'll end up the same way. Look at them." He gestured to the aliens, sitting in a defeated line. "Gravity's our best defense. You can't invade a planet when you're struggling just to stand. The planet will be yours, while you can barely stay on your feet," Gail teased. The alien's eyes narrowed, and it jabbed a spiny finger toward the nearby hills. "There," it said, wheezing slightly. "Test terrain. We will adapt." Gail smirked. "You sure about that? Climbing those hills is tough, even for us, and we live here. We will prevail," the alien insisted, though it swayed on its mechanical legs. A few of its companions looked like they wanted to protest, but stayed silent under its determined glare. "Suit yourselves," Gail shrugged. "We'll be right behind you, in case you need a hand or a stretcher." The aliens formed a shaky line, moving slowly and clumsily toward the hills. The humans followed at a safe distance, close enough to step in if things got out of hand. Gail had to admit, he was curious to see how far the aliens would go to prove themselves. "Place your bets," Gail muttered to Harris as they walked. "How long before they collapse again?" Harris chuckled. 10 minutes, tops. Those hills are steep, and they can barely walk on flat ground. The incline started gently, easy for the humans who move with practiced ease. But for the aliens, it was a different story. Their exo-suits whined and clanked with every step. Still, they pressed on, their leaders stumbling forward, driven by a mix of pride and stubbornness. "Why are they even bothering?" Private Kent whispered, shaking his head. "You'd think they'd quit after that crash." "They're trying to save face," Gail replied. "If they retreat now, they'll go back home in disgrace. Their society probably values determination or something. It's like they'd rather fail spectacularly than admit defeat." The hill grew steeper, and the aliens slowed. One of them tripped and crashed to its knees with a heavy thud. It struggled to rise, but its limbs trembled, showing the limits of the suit. Gail watched, expecting the others to leave their fallen comrade. But to his surprise, 2 aliens stopped to help it up. "Well, I'll be," Harris remarked. "Looks like they've got some spirit. Or they're desperate," Gail replied, though there was a hint of admiration in his voice. "Either way, they're not giving up." Makes you wonder how they thought invading Earth was a good idea in the first place. The lead alien paused, turning to look at Gail. "You think us foolish," it gasped, struggling for breath. "But we learn, adapt, evolve." Gail crossed his arms, keeping his distance. "Learn all you want, but Earth doesn't play fair. You're not just dealing with humans. You're up against everything this planet throws at you. Gravity's just the start." The alien nodded, or at least tried to. Its movements were slow, and it looked like it might collapse again. Yet, it kept climbing, placing one foot in front of the other with a mechanical rhythm. The others followed, slow but steady. "They're actually doing it," Kent murmured in disbelief. "They're not fast, but they're still moving." Gail felt a twinge of respect, though he wouldn't admit it. "We'll see how long they last," he muttered. But inside, he knew the aliens were right. They were adapting little by little to Earth's harsh environment. The climb dragged on. 10 minutes passed, then 15, then 20. Harris had already lost his bet. Now the humans watched in silence as the aliens continued their ascent. Their suits creaked under the strain, and their breaths came out in labored gasps, but they didn't stop. Finally, the lead alien reached a plateau and collapsed onto its hands and knees, gasping for air. Its body trembled with exhaustion. Slowly, it raised its head and locked eyes with Gail. "We can endure," it managed to say, its voice weak but determined. Gail approached cautiously, standing over the exhausted invader. "All right," he said, crossing his arms. "You made it this far, but let me ask you something. What's your endgame here? Even if you adapt, what makes you think you can take over a whole planet like this?" The alien didn't respond right away. It took several deep breaths, gathering its strength. "Not take over," it rasped. "Survive, coexist, learn your strength, and find ours." Gail blinked, taken aback. He had expected bravado, defiance, maybe even another threat. But this was different. He exchanged a glance with Harris, who looked just as surprised. "Coexist, huh?" Gail muttered, skeptical but curious. "So, you're saying this invasion was just a test run?" The alien nodded, sagging onto the ground, completely spent. "Adapt or perish," it whispered. "Your world, unforgiving. But we will adapt." Gail squatted down, looking the alien in the eye. "We'll see about that," he said. "For now, rest up. You're going to need it for what's coming next." The aliens lay scattered across the plateau, gasping for air and trying to recover from the climb. Sergeant Gail stood nearby, watching them closely. There was a strange respect growing among the humans, though no one voiced it. "What's our next move, sir?" Harris asked quietly, his eyes on the alien leader, who was now propped up against a rock, barely conscious. Gail considered the question. These aliens weren't what he had expected. They had come to conquer Earth. But now, beaten down by the planet's relentless gravity, they spoke of coexistence. But talk was cheap. Actions would reveal their true intentions. "We'll push them further," Gail decided, his eyes narrowing. "If they want to adapt, we'll give them the full Earth experience. Let's see if they've got the grit to handle the next test." Harris raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind, sir?" Gail smirked and pointed to a steep decline leading into a dense forest. "The valley down there. They'll need to go down, cross the forest, and reach the river on the other side. It's rugged terrain, thick undergrowth, slippery rocks. If they're serious about this coexistence idea, let's see if they can handle that. They'll manage." Gail thought as the squad exchanged uncertain glances, though there was excitement in their eyes. Gail's plan wasn't just to break the aliens. It was to truly test their resolve. If they could endure this, maybe there was hope for something other than conflict. Gail approached the alien leader, who managed to look up with tired, glassy eyes. "All right, here's the deal," Gail said, crouching to meet its gaze. "You want to learn, adapt, coexist? Fine, but you need to prove it. Down this hill, through that forest, and over to the river. No shortcuts. If you can do that, then maybe we can talk about something other than you crashing and burning here." The alien leader struggled to its feet, its exo-suit groaning in protest. "We accept," it rasped, though fear flickered in its eyes. Behind it, the other aliens stirred, eyeing the forest below with weariness. "Good," Gail nodded, stepping back. "Your move." The aliens lined up at the edge of the plateau, looking down at the steep slope. Their suits hummed as they adjusted to the incline, and they began their descent, moving cautiously. Gail and his squad followed from a distance, keeping an eye on the aliens. The slope was treacherous, scattered with loose rocks and patches of slick mud. It wasn't long before one alien slipped, tumbling halfway down as sparks flew from its suit. The others paused, glancing back, but the leader barked a command. "Keep going!" Its voice strained but firm. With a grunt, the fallen alien climbed to its feet and resumed its descent, battered but not broken. "They're giving it everything," Harris muttered, surprised. "Didn't think they'd make it this far." "They're stubborn, I'll give them that," Gail replied, though his tone was less harsh. He couldn't deny that their persistence was impressive. Bit by bit, they were adapting to Earth's harsh gravity. The aliens reached the bottom of the slope, panting and leaning on each other for support. They turned their eyes toward the forest, which promised a new set of challenges. Without hesitation, the leader took the first step into the thick undergrowth, the others close behind. The forest was unforgiving. Vines tangled around their legs. Branches whipped their faces, and roots tripped them at every step. The aliens moved slowly, learning to navigate the terrain. Occasionally, One would stumble, but they caught themselves just before falling. Despite the setbacks, they pressed forward, sweat dripping as they maneuvered through nature's obstacle course. Hours passed, and the squad silently followed. Gail's expression remained unreadable. The forest thickened, and the ground became more uneven. The aliens were clearly struggling, their suits creaking under the strain, but they didn't stop. At last, the sound of rushing water echoed through the trees. The river came into view, its surface sparkling in the sunlight. The aliens paused at its edge, eyes wide with both relief and fear. The river was the final barrier. "Well, they made it this far," Harris remarked, wiping sweat from his brow. "But can they cross it?" The alien leader stepped forward, looking back at its team. Together, it wheezed. Slowly and cautiously, it waded into the river, the water rising to its knees. The others followed, their steps hesitant but determined. For a moment, it seemed like the current might sweep them away. The water tugged at their legs, their suits groaning as they fought to stay balanced. But inch by inch, they made their way across, holding on to each other for support. Gail watched, arms crossed, as they finally reached the far bank and collapsed on the ground, utterly exhausted. They had done it. They had endured Earth's challenges, one grueling step at a time. Sergeant Gail approached the leader, who lay gasping on the ground. "All right," Gail said, his voice softer than before. "You've proven your point. You're not just here to take. You're here to learn. That's a start." The alien turned its head, looking up at Gail with eyes filled with exhaustion and something else. "Hope. We wish to coexist," it managed to say, its voice barely a whisper. Gail nodded and extended a hand. "Then let's start fresh. We'll figure this out together. But remember, gravity's always going to be against you here. You'll have to keep adapting every day." The alien hesitated for a moment before gripping Gail's hand with surprising strength. "We will." As Gail helped it to its feet, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of camaraderie. They had a long road ahead, but for now, Earth had given them a brutal lesson in humility, and it seemed like a lesson they were willing to learn.